a little bit of a warm-up, we do some quick fire questions. You know, I had to create some surprise for you guys here today. So what we'll do is, just in order, left to right, we'll just have the first answer that comes to your mind for each of these questions. And it doesn't need to be a long one, preferably not a long one, just quietly. What's the biggest opportunity that you see in digital video, or what's the biggest opportunity that you think the digital video allows?
Biggest digital opportunity, I reckon, just creating a top-line awareness.
I think changing consumer behaviour and how people are using different platforms at the same time to complement one another.
I think it allows you to experience a brand with sight, sound and motion.
I'm really excited from a creative front and some of the new things that we can do when we think about personalisation at scale.
I'm going to ask you a question about the biggest opportunity, without asking what's the biggest frustration that you guys see in digital video?
I think it's just, again, goes back to the point Sam took through. I think have a proper creative strategy. I think programmatic, RTB, managed service, direct IO, we're just the pipes. What goes in the front end is exactly what matters. So getting the right creative strategy to trigger the right media goals is what's important.
Not the only one obviously, but maybe measurement and kind of trying to standardise measurement where it just shouldn't be, and just trying to shoehorn those same metrics or KPIs into all your platforms and look at one number where we just can't actually assess things always in the same vein.
And I agree with them both. Video has tended to just be tacked on to your digital campaign, and it definitely deserves its own place. And it also needs to, I feel like people aren't necessarily looking at how it fits in with all their other type of AV, including television.
I agree with the measurement in particular. Yeah.
I'll start at the other end of this one for you, Callie, so you feel like you've got a new answer. True or false? Video isn't video unless it consists of sight, sound and motion.
Are we talking audio, video, audio, visual? It's a good question. I think the combination is the most powerful, so yes, I'm going to say that's video.
I'm going to disagree. I think video comes in all formats, so I mean, yes, sound on for certain ads is really important, but like as we just saw with the Lysol ad, I think you can have really compelling video without the sound.
I have to agree with that. Coming from an in-feed environment, I don't think sound is necessary to tell a story. I think it's a visual medium, but I don't think sound is necessary to understand a story.
This is a very kind of unanimous panel here. I do agree. The last thing you want to do as a consumer, enjoying a music on a commute in the morning and then blasting a video out about some product. So I reckon you don't need, if the creative is emotional enough, and there's a lot of ways you can have captions now these days, so sound is not probably the most, but it is, but I think without sound you can still deliver a message.
So let's kick into the main part of this, and I'll throw this one over to you, Callie. I always have flashbacks, and maybe these are kind of like post-traumatic stress flashbacks to university. I can remember Marshall McLuhan being one of those media theorists that always talked about and banged on about that the medium is the message, and that message changes based on where you post it, how you post it. So with that in mind, do you think that the message takes a different form based on who is viewing it and on what platform?
It's a good question. If I think from a consumer point of view and I think about content, I think content is content, and I don't know about all of you in the audience, but none of my friends tell me what platform they were watching Game of Thrones on when they talk about watching it. So therefore I think ads are ads, but I think we'd be silly if we didn't think about the way ads look in different formats. And for me, watching YouTube on a TV screen is very different to watching YouTube on my mobile, and a lot of those principles that Sam talked to really apply there. If you're watching on mobile, we know that the screens tend to be a little bit darker, so brighter colours, more contrast, capturing the personality and the people in there, so tighter framing, faster pacing. We need to grab attention early and quickly, and I think you need to think about that And my main tip would be just make sure when you're creating content that you're looking at what it looks like across every screen really early on, so that you know that it's going to work in every environment.
Jodi, this one's for you. What do you feel the role of digital video is as part of a total media strategy? I'll pick on you because you were quite passionate about that one at the start. With the particular thought that nothing in advertising, really nothing in anything, exists in a vacuum anymore.
Well, I mean, I don't think it ever has, and it's a really complicated question because it obviously depends on what your overall strategy is. Everything has a place, everything ladders up for overall reach. You know, you've got to be where your audiences are, obviously, and video is always a really important part of that. I mean, if you think about in Australia, digital's huge, but you know, television is still such a bedrock of media plans and getting the message out. And then it's, you know, how does everything else ladder up from that? How do you use your video to, you know, extend that reach? How do you present that message that you're trying to get across? How do you tell the story across all of the different types of media? It depends. Yeah.
So Ricky, how can you ensure that digital video plays well with the other formats that we've talked about?
I'll sort of pick it up what Jodi said. You know, us at a macro level, us humans are not easily convinced. You know, I'm not going to go walk into a store and pay $4,500 and buy a 70-inch LCD screen with all the benefits just because I saw a square ad on a mobile phone. It comes down to exposure strategy. You wake up in the morning, you see a broadcasting TV, that's exposure 1. You're driving down, you hear a radio ad, exposure 2, exposure 3, and you're pushing people from the top end to the prospecting to consideration. So digital video is part of that exposure strategy. It can't work in isolation. It needs to pick up. It needs to have its own ecosystem, but again, in conjunction with everything else. So I'm a big believer of that. You know, in my past 14 years of career at media agencies, I've always worked with advertisers trying to convince it has to be part of the media mix modeling.
Cool. So Lottie, messaging and market seems to be a little bit fractured now, and I've got the fortunate benefit that I'm not a marketer, but if I was, I'd be really confused, and I feel that it's very disjointed around what are the right steps on where and how I should approach the placement of those ads. So how should, like, if you look at what advice can you give clients on how they should assess where they can place their digital video spend?
I think the first thing is kind of what I mentioned before, which is we don't create our stories and then trying to shoehorn it into every platform. We should be assessing all the different platforms individually and deciding, okay, is this the right place to tell a short message? It might be 6 seconds and it's laser focused. Can I get away with, you know, is it a long form story environment where it can be a little bit longer and maybe telling more of a purpose-driven story? But then I would also think about, you know, what do I want to achieve and what are the kind of almost USPs of each different platform, like what can I do there? So if you think about, do I want to be reactive or conversational, like what is the best place to be doing that component of what I'm trying to achieve? Or if I want to drip feed a message, or if I want to talk to existing fans, like there's all these different things that we should take into consideration that then should inform the kind of storytelling that we do. And I really agree with what Jodi said, like there is a spectrum of how we can tell a story, and we should you know, be thinking about how we can leverage each platform and its unique kind of value proposition as to how we convey that message.
I think back again to my first kind of term in university. It's funny how all of these things go back to where you started, but I feel like the marketing funnel is the new black. Again, ironically, everyone's now starting to talk about it. So Kelly, where do you think and feel that they actually fit in that marketing funnel?
This is an interesting one. I think as an industry, we've probably overcomplicated it a little bit on format.
We wouldn't do that, would we?
I think it makes it really hard for marketers. Obviously, you want high awareness formats at the top of the funnel and you can take them through, but I think, you know, if all you've got is a 30-second TVC, I think you're best off working with that rather than doing nothing. Start looking at where the audiences are and how you can use different signals. I think one of the powers from digital is that we've got different signals that can take your consumers through the funnel. So you can start quite broad at the top, but then we can know when people are about to have a child or they're in market, and then start to target them with that message that pulls them through and ultimately out the other end. And the creative can support it through the entire the entire journey.
I'm going to throw over to the floor in a minute, so just have a think if there's any questions that you'd like to ask the panellists before we start to wrap up and close into the end of this session. But whilst you guys are thinking, Jodi, how do you feel, is AVOC and that measurement the right judge of success of the performance of a digital campaign? I feel like you're almost holding back a little bit of vomit there.
I'm just going to say no. I mean, I think it really depends on what you're looking for. But it's great as a standard metric if that's the kind of video that you're looking to deliver. If you're trying to extend your television campaign, but like we spoke about, sound on isn't necessarily the most important thing. Obviously being viewable is really important, but when you look at video and the formats that are out there now, everything is so much more viewable. Everyone's done such a great job of getting that standard up. I just don't really understand. It feels like AVOC is a measurement that came in a little late, and I think we've all sort of moved past that.
So if not AVOC, then what?
Well, look, I mean, obviously viewability is really important. I think it's about having like a lot of different measurements, because your campaign KPIs are going to dictate what the measurement should be. And again, what type of campaign are you buying? Because AVOC on a campaign where you're doing 6-second sound off ads through social, it will fail on your AVOC, but obviously you still want it to be viewable. It's got to be more about, at the end of the day, everything has to come back to sales, right? So it has to be about hitting your business goals.
Cool. We've been told forever, and Lottie, I'll ask you this one, that do you feel that length is important in the video that you're actually creating?
I do. We did some research at Twitter, but looking at lots of different platforms just to see how it kind of netted out. But we know that, for example, on our platform, consumers expect a pre-roll to be 15 seconds or less. So it's just, partly it's about meeting consumer expectations, and I think that is our job as kind of publishers and marketers, to work out what's the most effective way to talk to someone in their given environment. Firstly, because you don't want to annoy them if they expect something completely different. You want to give them a good experience, and you want to kind of get the best out of them. So I strongly believe that what mindset they're in should inform, like, if you can get away with telling, a longer story, or if you need to keep it short and concise to kind of improve the consumer experience, if nothing else. But then also, obviously, your results are going to improve if you kind of tailor to their expectations.
And then, Ricky, where do we draw the line between mass awareness for video, or mass awareness for video, because I feel that's one of the things that television does really well and it's always done really well, versus precision targeting that's now available with a lot of the different digital tools that are out there? What do you feel is the right balance and the right mix?
Look, I think it's an interesting one, Ollie. Totally. I think TV's done a great job, and I think TV needs to be used as a mass media because it creates that bigger kind of awareness. Digital, we have the ability, and that's why digital has been growing so, because you can be a bit more precision targeting. But again, it goes back to the point, what is the core objective? If it's a shampoo and a soap, it's a day-to-day item, you've got to target it out. But if you're trying to get into a particular product which is so niche, you have to have targeting on. But my perspective to this is 2019, one size fits all has never worked in the fashion industry, and I can tell you it will not work in the video industry. We've got to get it right, because if you don't, and then I slightly disagree with Kelly on that, just a little bit controversial on the panel, if you have a 30-second creative and you're expecting big things, your comms to deliver a marketing objective from 2.5% to 3.5%, you need to spend more money on your creative. And I'm a big believer of that.